One thing is just to inform our strategy, and our approach is to be able to audit and see what are other people doing, whether it's competitors, industry peers, industry leaders that we aspire to. So being able to understand what the market looks like. That doesn't mean we need to mirror and copy what others do. We also want to differentiate, but just to have our pulse on the competitive and industry landscape is helpful. And then to know what's working and what's not. So back when I was studying in college, I knew I wanted to focus on communications and journalism, and that's where I was studying, and my minor was in journalism. So I did a lot of writing, which PR and communications still does have a lot of writing. So I'm glad that I honed that skill, but I didn't land exactly as, a broadcast journalist or a newspaper reporter like I thought I might. It wasn't until it was my last 2 years of college where I dabbled in the only public relations courses that we had, and both were taught by adjunct professors that worked in the field. And that's what drew me in. One of my professors, my late professor, Jack Jackson, he had his own tech PR firm, and he was a contact that I stayed in touch with after college. And it was the recession. It was 2009 here in the US, and lots of places were not hiring. They were actually laying off. And I was looking at PR agencies because I figured, this seemed like an interesting field. There was a lot I could do. Writing definitely played a role in that. And most of the PR agencies had just laid off. And I was fortunate where I was able to live at home with my parents after college and wasn't paying rent. So I was able to afford and take on an unpaid full-time internship at a B2B tech agency in healthcare and life sciences. So I was able just to throw myself in and learn, really B2B tech, learn all the acronyms with SaaS and cloud and a whole other language that I knew nothing about. I kind of just fell into tech PR after college, and it was fast paced. I really enjoyed it. There was a lot to learn. I was helping with different clients, awards, and listening silently in on their calls and tracking coverage for acquisitions. I had one of my clients was bought by HP. I remember just all of the coverage coming in that I was tracking. So I kind of just from there landed at, after that, I was able to land a full-time role at Pan Communications, which I stayed there for majority of my career, moved up to the vice president role, but had a lot of experience with a number of different enterprise software brands. I did have some experience in the consumer and professional services world, but then our agency really focused on B2B. So I landed primarily in enterprise software. MarTech was a big focus for me. And then from there, I had my eye on G2. A lot of my clients were being recognized, and I was the one that was putting out the press releases about their rankings on G2 reports, and it was a really cool asset from a PR and comms standpoint and social. And I actually attended the G2 Reach conference in 2019 before I joined G2. I was interested to learn more about the role of reviews and customer advocacy in comms. And I've just been following the brand for a while. And ultimately, they opened up a director of comms role as they were, looking to grow and mature this function of their marketing team. And I was fortunate enough to land this role. So I've been working here as the director of communications at G2 for just about a year now. I've worked with many clients over the years on many projects. I'd say the one that stands out is probably because it was the most newsworthy and exciting. My client at the time was, they've rebranded since, it's now Human Software. It was White Ops at the time, but it was, they are busting these ad fraud operations, and there was this huge, this huge operation it ended up being, I believe, the biggest ad fraud bust ever at the time. And the FBI was involved because they were tracking these cyber criminals in Russia, and we were partnering with Google on this as well. There was a lot of very kind of under embargo kind of on NDA conversations happening that I was a part of with these kind of weekly calls. We were talking with Google and planning around. We didn't know when the bust was going to happen. We knew about a year out this was being tracked. It was the leaders at White Ops at the time that were involved with uncovering this and getting other industry leaders in and getting the FBI involved. So we had to be really careful and sensitive about our communications. We didn't want to go. We wanted to make sure we spoke with a reporter that would tell the story best and tell it well. And then from there, the messages would get picked up. It didn't mean we only did one interview. There were multiple, but that we really focused in on the messaging. I was, when we were on media briefings with reporters, we had it so that, we were chatting. Myself and the executive spokesperson were on video, so we could communicate, but we just kind of gave the reporter the dial-in. So just so we could kind of have our own signals if we needed to for any messages. But it was really exciting. We had this huge BuzzFeed feature, Wall Street Journal. It was a huge national news story and just really exciting. So to see that all go down and just build up and to be, and to also partner with Google, we had to make sure that we were coordinating on our messaging and who was owning what. One thing is just to inform our strategy and our approach is to be able to audit and see what are other people doing, whether it's competitors, industry peers, industry leaders that we aspire to. So being able to understand what the market looks like. That doesn't mean we need to mirror and copy what others do. We also want to differentiate, but just to have our pulse on the competitive and industry landscape is helpful. And then to know what's working and what's not. So that can be something as simple as, I had a client I remember where we would look at their Google Analytics and to see if there were any of the media publications that we secured coverage in that were driving traffic back to the website. And I remember there was, more of this vertical niche publication that doesn't have that many visitors to the site, but it was a large traffic referral source for us because it was so focused. It was it really catered to their exact persona that they were targeting. And, this small vertical publication drove more traffic than the coverage that we got in Forbes. That doesn't mean we still don't try to get coverage in Forbes, of course, but it just has a different purpose. That's giving broader brand visibility and awareness, where this is actually driving eyeballs and the right people back to the website, because then we could see not only do we have, so many visitors, but they are spending time on the site, they are clicking around to different pages. So it's really the right people. So that does inform our strategy that, in terms of who we target and how we set our metrics. Well, I don't know if this is the right answer, but this is one thing that comes to mind is we recently at G2 reached 2 million reviews on our marketplace. And that was something, it's public. We're counting down on our homepage. We have the total reviews there pretty much in real time. And that was something we knew was an exciting milestone. We had reached 1 million reviews in 2019. And it was just over 3 years before we hit that next million, which is pretty impressive considering the timeline it took to get to that first million. So we did have a campaign around this. We had, some social, we're celebrating it publicly with a blog post talking about some of the trends in the data, global trends, category growth. But that was I thought that was interesting because we really couldn't plan a date for when we would announce this. It had to just be when we hit the 2 million. So, we were worried, is it going to happen over the holiday break? When is it going to happen on a weekend? And I remember I, went to bed on a Sunday night or whatever it was. And then the next morning we were there. I had checked and we were ready to promote it. So that actually, that was an exciting milestone and where data can actually help us tell our story. Interesting about measurement and metrics in PR and communications is that it's really hard to have one metric that tells the whole story. Because we can look at quantity, we can look at quality, we can look at different aspects of a program. So I do find it helpful to have, a dashboard of metrics so we can tell that holistic story. I know share of voice is something that is often debated and some people love it, some people hate it. I go back and forth on it. It does play a role in I think because it is able to give that one quick view of how do you stack up against your competitors. But I find it to be a flawed metric since it looks at quantity only, and that could be negative mentions, and even if you have your best quarter ever, if that competitor had, a major launch or an acquisition or something that, even if it was a lawsuit and something negative and they got more coverage, they would still outpace you. So it doesn't necessarily speak to your performance. So I always try to caution with share of voices. It's a good to have. It's hard to set a goal on it unless you're filtering for, I've done this where I've filtered it for a certain topic and term that we want to be known for, and measuring that against competitors, or even filtering by a publication list. So it's only mentions in the places we care about. So it does carry a little bit more of a quality metric that way. But I think, yes, you want some of the by the numbers, pieces of coverage, but it needs to be put into context. And that's why I think people like share of voice so much, is it's against other companies. So I just think if there is, we want to secure 100 pieces of coverage this year, if that's the case, what does that mean? So putting into context, okay, well, last year we had this many and our competitors have this many, and kind of every goal needs to be data driven, and have, a strategy and a reasoning behind it. Nothing should ever be arbitrary, of course, but that's why I think that auditing and benchmarking to inform those metrics is so important. So I know I mentioned like filtering for a certain term. I do like message pull through, especially if there's a term that you really want to be known for in the market, to be able to measure how that's increasing over time, your affiliation to that term. I had a client that I remember wanted to be known for customer engagement, and that was something we were filtering for. Yes, we were intentionally building that into our owned content, press releases, blogs, media responses, encouraging executives to, say it as much as they could in their interviews when they were describing the company. But all of that did contribute to us, being increasingly known for that over competitors. It's, of course, an interesting time and a difficult time for many companies just with the economy. I know we've heard a lot about layoffs. Some, budgets are being tightened. So it does remind me of, some of the past recessions. I mean, I was entering the field in 2009, so the layoffs had already happened by the time I entered. So it was at that tail end where we were on the upswing. And then during, 2020, I'd say at the height of COVID, we had kind of that temporary pause. Many companies were either pausing budgets or temporarily reducing them. We came back really strong, and now here we are again. So it's nothing that we haven't seen before. I think it's just going to be, I think, if for communications teams and PR agencies we always want to prove our value, but even more so now, which is where that measurement comes into play. And you don't need to measure everything under the sun necessarily, but like what matters to the business right now, and how can we show that? And really, I think I talked earlier about challenges with knowing where to prioritize and focus, because there can be so much opportunity for growth and for brand awareness. But now is a time to really focus in on what works and what we can measure and show that value. So I think I would imagine that most communications, PR leaders, teams are going to be like most departments, really focused on what drives the needle, what drives that growth. And doesn't really mean you can't experiment and test with new things. You certainly can, but as long as they contribute to, what those goals are, and just really making sure that this is a year that you're being very focused and intentional. I think that would probably be serving up the insights that we need that are custom to us. And I mean, that could be media coverage. It's still very difficult to weed out, the irrelevant mentions, especially, when you're a company like G2, there's a lot of mentions that come in that are unrelated to us. And I feel like every company comes up with this. Those that have very specific names are maybe a little bit more lucky when it comes to that. But I would say that's one thing for sure. And that goes the same thing for trying, when you're pulling any sort of measurement or metric, it does usually take a good amount of homework to make sure that it's accurate because, like I said, there could be irrelevant mentions, or you really need to filter it for what you need. So I think that would be helpful if I had a magic wand to say, okay, what are our, 2022 results? And these are all the things I'm looking for. Yes, we have the capability to pull them, but to really automate that and have confidence in it and know it's accurate. Yeah, I would say jump at the opportunity, learn what you can. I know I mentioned when I was, I had an unpaid internship. I was like a sponge and I got lots of great exposure because they were looking for, affordable resources that could help them during this time. And I was able to do that and just join lots of calls, talk to different people. Even if it was as simple as bringing agendas into the meeting, like it seems like it's not an important task, but it is. So I do see a lot of more junior folks get really eager, like, how come I'm not the one that's getting to, pitch reporters yet, or whatever that role might be. It's be patient, and that foundation is super important, and it helps you also learn what you like and don't like, and if it's the right field for you, or if there's different aspects of PR that you want to move into. Like I eventually learned that I liked enterprise software and MarTech, and that's where I ended up focusing. So use that time just to learn and take advantage of any opportunity you get.